Hello and welcome to my channel, Share It with Merit. I am Merit. In this video, I am going to talk about happiness. That is a big loaded word with a lot of different connotations and interpretations. And so the first thing I want to start out with is the definition, which I pulled up here. So Merriam-Webster dictionary definition of happiness is a state of well-being and contentment, joy, and also be a pleasurable or satisfying experience. Okay. And so I'm glad they actually define it that way, well-being and contentment, because I think that's accurate. That's the way I describe it or I define it. I just think that sometimes it can be perceived or understood as rah happiness, good times all the times, and feeling in a state of, above neutral all the time, or when you experience it. And I don't think that that's helpful, in that our culture puts a focus on, are you happy, being happy, the pursuit of happiness, right? And so it's a really important, wonderful state of feeling to pursue. I highly recommend it. That's why I do the work that I do, is to help others and myself to find a sense of contentment, really. But if I said, hey, like I do these things called happiness parties, but if I said, oh, how about a contentment party? You see, the feel is a little bit off, right? And at a party, we are going to be probably a little bit above baseline, right? A little above neutral, but this sense of well-being and contentment is something that I think is well worth trying to pursue on the day-to-day, right? And if you've seen my video on the 95% life, what I'm talking about there is that, 95% of our lives are days where nothing really happens. And those are the days to really hone in on and cultivate a mindset of well-being, contentment. Peace, I think, is another really more accurate description of what I'm talking about when I talk really about happiness. So I think that's important to kind of level set there in terms of what are we actually talking about, right? And then this is something I think about a lot. And I just worked up a little PowerPoint, and I'm going to try to share this on my screen. Try being the operative word. I am not a technical person, but let's see what happens. Share screen. Okay. And let's go to here. And let's go to here. And then let's do, let's just try and make it a little more visually interesting for you. But see, yeah, I can't do that now. Oh, there we go. Okay. Success. How do you define success? Getting the PowerPoint up. Now, I don't know how this is going to look when I review the video, so hopefully it's up, but I don't know because now I'm in the corner. Okay. Anyway, we're part of happiness is recognizing what you're not good at and letting it go and letting it be okay, because I am not good at this stuff, and that's okay. I will not let it ruin my day, and hopefully it doesn't ruin yours. So anyway, this is what I came up with. This is what I am fairly good at. And I'm calling this a happiness continuum, as you can see. And the way I look at this is that there's sort of a continuum from surviving to thriving, right? And you may see that. Are you surviving? Are you thriving? And I've worked in that paradigm quite a bit, but it occurred to me that that is also a paradigm, or excuse me, a continuum. That is, you're not just surviving or just thriving. I mean, those cannot be the only two options, right? And so I thought about it some more, and I thought, well, you know what? There's at least four that I came up with. So there's surviving, right? Just finding safety, right? And the blue line here is sort of the happiness factor. So if you're just surviving, if you're just trying to well, not to exist, because that's the next one, but really trying to survive, that you are not safe and you need to seek safety, that when you find safety, that's actually a level of happiness, right? That's a certain level of contentedness because you have found safety, right? And that's in that surviving place. The next one would be existing. So for the most part, safety, you're not living on the streets. There's not real threats, right? Um, you're housed, you're fed, basic needs are met. Um, but it's a stressful life, right? You're living paycheck to paycheck, or your relationships might be really stressful and abusive. Um, and for you, what happiness means is to find relief from the stress, to find those moments where you're not being pressured into your existence, if you will, right? That your bills are paid for the month, right? Maybe you got a raise, or maybe there's some, you had a success in a relationship, right? Some good things are happening, but you're still really just kind of head above water. Okay. The next level is living. Okay. And I think this is important because I think that there's that line between surviving and existing. That's kind of half the picture here. And once your basic needs are met, you start to get into that existence space, right? Then the next two, living and thriving. And sometimes there's overlap with all of this. Let me just say that. But I think a lot of times people are living and think they're thriving, but aren't, right? And so living is where we get caught up very much in this American culture of seeking pleasure. Give me the sugar, the salt, the fat, the quick dopamine release, and it's this sort of treadmill of, well, what's the next, happiness thing? Kind of like what I talked about in the beginning of this, and this constant sort of craving for the next high and the next piece of chocolate or whatever it may be, right? So excuse me, safety is there, basic needs are met. Now it's like, oh, do I want the BMW or the Acura, right? And do I want the next pretty thing? And unfortunately, this is where a lot of competition and comparison sits, right? So our American version of, living the good life is having the granite countertops and, the material things, right? And the pleasure and all of that stuff. And that can get confused for thriving. Is there happiness? Absolutely, there's happiness. But in my opinion, pleasure is but one form of happiness, as are having your needs met and being safe, right? Those are components of happiness, and they're really important components of happiness, right? But it isn't until you hit the thriving mark that I think you really can start to cultivate and come from that place of that self-contentment, right? Because is there much self-contentment really when you're trying to, impress your neighbors, right? Or, be the best at something or have the most or whatever it may be, right? When you get into that comparison, that's sort of the opposite of actually self-contentment, right? Self-contentment is like what I said before, like it's okay to be bad at things. Nobody's good at all the things, and that would be boring anyway, right? So let the people who are good at technology, for example, do that and have wonderful, fulfilling lives doing technology. I want that. And you focus on what it is that you're good at. And so as you can see in that column, it's authentic connection with self or others, self and others, excuse me, definitely not mutually exclusive. Okay. However, authentic connection starts with oneself. And what I mean by that is that when you really take the time to understand who you are, who you want to be, right? Because that's always up for change. You can always define who you are, and you can always change that definition, right? You can always grow into whoever it is that you want to be. And part of understanding who you are, though, is taking that time to really learn what is important to you, what matters to you, what you're good at, um, and developing all of that, right? And being honest with yourself. And so when I say authentic connection starts with oneself, it's you are the only person that you can be 100% authentic with. And that's not a given, right? Think of all the times you've lied to yourself. I know I have, right? And so being authentic with oneself is about being truly connected with oneself to the extent that we can. I don't sit here and say that I am fully authentic with myself. I honestly don't even know if that's possible, because there's parts of me that I'll probably never fully see or understand, right? The subconscious and all of that. But so let's say in the context of our conscious selves, being as honest with oneself is where it starts, right? Because we can only connect to each other to the extent that we're connected with ourselves, right? And so as you do that work, and I'm just going to say, I say this a lot in my sessions with my clients, because they get it. They're coming to me in either coaching or therapy. And sometimes we have this conversation about, gosh, well, why won't so-and-so go to therapy, right? Or go to coaching, and it's all around this stigma that, oh, it must mean something's wrong with you, right? Well, first of all, there's something wrong with all of us, okay? Again, it's okay. It's okay, right? But what I say to that is, why wouldn't you take the time to understand yourself? I mean, an hour a week, even that, an hour a week, just to look at who you are, right? Just to explore and try to understand as best you can, get to know yourself, right? And really find your authentic self and your authentic voice, right? If only for you, right? I get it. It's scary out in the world. We got to armor up, right? We got to armor up and head out there every day or whenever you decide to go out, right? And that's uh part of then being authentic with others. Okay, so let's say you get to that place with yourself, right? And it's a process. It's always evolving, and because as you change, right, your authentic connection changes, right? So let's say though that you are doing the work and you're really starting to feel that thrivingness, right, within, and you want to connect with others. Well, what you're going to find is as you speak your truth and come out into the world as who you are and want to be, there is going to be resistance to that for lots and lots of different reasons that I don't have time to go into right now. Well, I guess I have, but we'll keep this contained, right? Because I have to be careful of going off onto tangents. It's one of the things I like to do. Okay, so as you become more authentic with yourself and start to share your authentic self with others, there's going to be people, excuse me, that know you, for example, and aren't going to be so happy with that change for whatever reasons, and they're going to push back. Okay, fine. And the world itself is going to push back in some ways. And there's going to be others who go, hey, what's different? Did you get a haircut or whatever it would be? You know how that is. And they're gonna tell me more. What is going on with you, right? I want what she's having or he's having, right? So there's going to be both of that. There's going to be all of that, I should say. So needless to say, go in the direction where you are supported and encouraged to be your authentic self. That's where you're going to have those connections with others. And the more authentic you are with yourself and others, the more you're going to connect with the light, with others who are being authentic with themselves and others, right? And you can just imagine that the competition just goes away, right? When I'm being my authentic self and I'm leaving space for others to be their authentic self, there's no competition there, right? Even if we're doing the same thing, there's plenty of room for all of us. There's an abundance of everything. There really is, if you decide there is in your mind, and your mindset is really everything when it comes to this stuff. So one last thought on this, and then I will stop the video for now, until the next one. And what I wanted to say about this is about connecting with others. And so, as I mentioned before, we have to kind of armor up when we go outside, right? When we go into the world, because we don't know. I mean, and again, there's a continuum. So let's say you're fully authentic with oneself, right? With yourself. The people that you can be the most authentic with, you still have there's a little bit of a mask, right? You can't and won't expose everything to another human being. That no one's ever going to know every little thought in your head, and they don't need to, right? So that's what I mean about being only authentic really with yourself 100%, right? But 99% with maybe your partner or best friend or whatever it may be, right? Whomever it may be. So a little bit of a mask, right? And that's going to be your closest orbit around you, are the people who show you encouragement, and they vote your victory, and they absolutely welcome your authentic self, and you welcome theirs. It's mutual, right? And then that orbit goes out and out and out. And then, the most armored up you have to be is, let's say, in a room full of strangers, that in a scary part of town, right? Like where you're the most, kind of back into the survival mode. Actually, if you don't know what you're getting into, you're going to go back into that survival mode, and you're going to armor up, right? And I'm largely talking emotionally, but sometimes physically too. And so, two things on that. One is, and this comes up all the time with my clients, is that if you're lucky, the closest group, with the smallest, the thinnest mask, if you're lucky, some of them will be family members, right? And that gets into a whole thing about family narratives and what it means, and duty and obligation. Well, I must because they're my parent, or I must because they're my child, or my whatever. And that's that's a personal journey for sure. But if you're lucky, some of them are family members. And if not, that's okay. Because at the end of the day, it only matters if you decide it matters, right? And I would challenge you on that. I would say, look, if you want this thriving experience, then you need to be very mindful and careful and clear about who you allow into that space, right? That your time, your energy, and your space are really the most precious things that you have, not your granite countertops or your BMW. Okay, those are nice, don't get me wrong, and by all means seek them. Pleasure is very important, but authentic connection is far more fulfilling. It really, really is. And there was the last thing I wanted to say on that too is, yeah, look, if you have to armor up, well, you do have to. Again, we all do. When I go outside, I'm not like this. I mean, where I can be, I am, but not at the grocery store, right? Right. So I got my armor on when I go to the grocery store to a certain extent, right? It's so important. And if you look back at this continuum here, it's so important that where you live, right, in your home. Now, again, if you're just surviving, you may not have a home, okay, and that's why you need to seek safety first, right? This is kind of like that pyramid, right? So, but when you have a home, and I don't care if it's a studio apartment or a 12-bedroom mansion, that home needs to be a sacred space. Because if it isn't, where are you supposed to take all this armor off? Right? You can't take it off out in the world, right? And then if you come home and you can't take it off at home because your home life is unsafe or toxic or abusive, or even, it's really uncomfortable, it's not safe for you to be authentic, then you need to look at that first, right? Because you can't do any of this work until you're safe, till your basic needs are met, right? And actually, one of the biggest hoops is getting over the seeking pleasure, because as you can imagine, That's a positive feedback loop, right? The other two, not so much, right? Trying to find safety and stress relief, you can understand the motivation there. But as soon as you get in, and this is why I think a lot of people get stuck here. Hey, I got the house, I got the car, the 2.5 kids or whatever it may be. But are you really happy, right? Are you thriving? Are you having an authentic experience with yourself and others? Okay. I hope that was helpful. I certainly hope my PowerPoint came through. I'm about to go find out. Uh, you can find me at shareitwithmerit.com. I do have a downloadable recipe for happiness on there with a video on how to go through that worksheet. So you can find your own recipe for happiness because it is very individual. And I will see you next time. If I can get out of here. Oh, wait, I have to stop sharing first. Okay. And done, I think.